Welcome to the week number 15 overview video for microeconomic principles here at Rutgers University in Camden. And this is the week of the optional final exam. Please remember that you're not required to take this. I will be posting a provisional grade listing, so you will receive a provisional grade on 12/7. So that you know what your provisional grade is. Remember that if you don't take the final, your provisional grade becomes your grade for the course. So if you're unhappy with your provisional grade and wish to improve your grade for the course, you can take the optional final. Please remember that when you take the optional final, you are committing to taking the optional final exam. The optional final, your grade on that optional final replaces your lowest test score for the semester. So once you start taking it, you have committed to taking the exam. So make sure you realize that once you commit, you are taking the optional final, and you have to finish completing it. There's no changing your mind after starting taking the optional final exam. And here I'm just going to give you a breakdown of the distribution of the questions by chapter, just to give you an idea of which ones are relatively more important relative to others. Just note that they're all fairly close in the number of questions to each other. So there's not ones that are overly weighted, but I just wanted to give you an idea of how many questions per chapter. As you can see, Chapter 1 has 6 questions. Chapter 2 also has 6 questions. Chapter 8 has a little bit more. I'm sorry, not Chapter 8, but Chapter 3 has 8 questions, so it's weighted a little more heavier than Chapters 1 and 2. Chapter 4 also has 8 questions, and Chapter 5 has 7 questions. Chapter 6 has 8 questions. Chapter 7 has 5 questions. Chapter 8 has 6 questions. Chapter 9 also has 6 questions, and Chapter 10 again has 6 questions. Moving on to Chapter 11, that one has 5 questions. Chapter 12 has 6 questions coming from it. Chapter 13 has 7 questions coming from it. Chapter 14 has 4 questions, so Chapter 13 has 7 questions. Chapter 14 has 4 questions. Chapter 15 also has 4 questions. And finishing out, Chapter 16 has 5 questions. Chapter 16 has 5 questions, Chapter 17 has 3 questions, and Chapter 18 has 5 questions. So Chapter 7 is relatively light relative to the other chapters. So make sure you realize the distribution of the questions by chapter. This will allow you to focus your studies on the areas or the chapters that have a little bit more weight on the optional final exam. And as always, make sure you use the study plan in my Econ Lab. Remember, you could take this optional final exam 3 times. Again, I recommend that you take it early on in the week and get feedback on how well you did in the areas that you're having difficulty, and then use the study plan in my Econ Lab to work on the areas that you did not do well in. That way you can use this iterative process of taking the exam, going back and working on the areas that you're weak, take the exam, the optional final exam, another time, and hopefully improve your score and improve your knowledge on the subject. And if you so desire, you can rework the study plan another time in preparation for your final attempt. So make sure you avail yourselves of the fact that you can take the optional final 3 times and use the study plan to work on the areas that you are having some difficulty.